Hi there, this is Jeanette. Thanks for joining me today. I have two cards that I made using the same stamp set from My Favorite Things. This set is called You Have My Heart. So first off, I have this sweet one with the little girl sort of sitting in profile with her dog. And I put a beautiful Celebrate die cut sentiment on the front. And when you open it up, it says Happy Birthday here. And then the second one features the little girl with her dog again, and this one I made into a Valentine's card by putting a die cut heart for the background of the card. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to share with you how I created both of them. So here's the stamp set, and I'm going to be using my MISTI tool to stamp the images. I have some Neenah cardstock that I just added underneath those magnets, and I'm just placing the images onto the paper, making sure to leave enough space so that it will be easy to die cut them all, and I'm stamping them with Memento Tuxedo black ink. And you can see that I did go over it 2 times to get a nice impression. Here you just saw the markers that I'm using, but I will list them like this on the screen as I use them. So I'm going to be coloring the images with Copic markers, which is why I used Neenah and Memento. And I am just working on one little space here. I like to work in little sections, so I did all the skin on one figure and then just did the exact same thing on the other one. This way I get a very nice blend because the ink really doesn't have a chance to dry before I add the next color. You can see I'm just leaving a little bit of white, so that will end up being my highlight when I color over it with my lightest marker. And I will go in with some cheek colors on both of them. So now I'm going to be doing the hair, and I'm going to work on both images at the same time because I do want the ink to dry a little bit in between so that it doesn't blend too much. You'll understand what I mean when I work with the next color. So this is E31, which is sort of one of the mid-tones, and now I'm working with my darker shade. And because I let it dry a little bit, it's not blending too much. I really want to define those certain areas where I want it to be darker to sort of give definition to her hair. So I'm working with this darkest color right now, and that gives me also a feel of how it's going to look and where I have to add some highlights. So usually I don't work in such a strange order of colors, like from light to dark, dark to light, but this seemed to work for this particular hair. So now I'm working with this much lighter color, and you can see it's lightening it up, but I'm still keeping a little bit of darkness there on the bottom. It's going to be the same thing on the other side. Here I'm just using my colorless blender because I went outside the lines a little bit, so just sort of move that color back in. And you can see here with the lighter marker going over top, it sort of lightens it up a little bit. I felt that there wasn't enough definition on this one, so I am going in with some of the darker markers just to add a little bit more definition. I realized I forgot her legs, so I'm coloring those up with the same skin color markers, and again using that colorless blender to push any stray ink back where it needs to be. Since this was going to be a birthday card for my sister, I decided to color up her dress with one of my sister's favorite colors, which is purple. So I'm just keeping the shadows at the edges of her dress and leaving the middle part lighter. Once I had the dress all done, I did go in with that marker and do the sleeves. And again, use that colorless blender. Here I still thought there wasn't enough definition, so went in with that darker color again and just defined that hair just a little bit more. And I softened it up with the E31 and then blended it out with the lightest marker, which was E30. So now I'm going to work on this little puppy here. I'm using basically the same colors that I did for her hair, bar the two darker shades. And it's such a little figure, so it didn't take very long at all to color in. I'm still working at that area. That purple really bled into that area, and it took a while for me to get rid of it, but if you just do it a little bit at a time, you end up getting rid of the color. Just colored in his nose there with some neutral grays, and now I'm working on the grass. There's not a whole lot of grass, and I decided to just sort of draw a straight line across the edge there. And just define the strands a little bit with the darker marker. So we're going to move on to the next figure. This is the one I'm going to be using for the Valentine's Day card, so of course I wanted to color her dress up in pink. And I gradually added colors here. I didn't know exactly where I was going when I first started. I knew I wanted it to be pink. And I had pulled out the R30 series. And I'm just gradually adding more definition. I did end up leaving the sleeves quite light and then darkened up the dress. You can see I'm blending out now. And then I'm going in with the very lightest color, the R30, to complete the blend. But I didn't feel like it was blended enough. I didn't feel like the dark areas were dark enough. So I went back in with my R35 and deepened up those shadows. Then I blended it all again. I decided to do the heart, and I didn't feel like it was dark enough, so I pulled out my R29 to add some more shadow, and then I thought that's what I needed for the dress. So I did add a little bit of R29, you can see just in a few areas on the dress, and then it really, I felt like there was enough definition, the shadows were dark enough, and I was pretty happy with how that ended up looking. I'm going to color her socks with the two lighter pink colors, and then do her little boots here. Again, same colors that I used for her hair, well, 3 of the same colors anyhow. And then I'll work on the dog using the same colors as the other dog. Just putting the shadows on the underside of his face and the underside of his body, and right underneath his neck. And I'm just going to blend that all nicely so it's nice and soft and you don't see any harsh lines. Do his nose with that neutral gray combo, and I colored in his collar with the dark red. And the last thing to do is the bone, so just C3, C1, and a little bit of colorless blender to lighten it up a little bit. Now to die cut them, since this is an older set, they have the dies that are not open. So what I do is I cut a piece of cardstock with the die, and then I put the negative over top the image, and then I can sort of just fit that die right inside. It's almost like a puzzle piece. It just sort of, you can just wiggle it until it sort of sits in the right exact place, and then you can just cut out your images and they cut perfectly. There's no guessing. They cut exactly where you want them to be. So now we're going to take care of the card bases. So I am just scoring these so that they are A2 sized, and I am trimming a little bit off each side. This is for the first card, which is going to be, the image is going to be sort of inside the card, but you're going to be able to see it from the outside. This is something I saw Jennifer McGuire do, and I thought it was such a cute idea, so I have borrowed that idea from her. So I am going to take one of the card bases and just add like a background to it. So it's the upper portion of one of the cards. I am sponging some spun sugar on first, and then I'm going in with picked raspberry, and then just buffing that at the bottom to make it nice and soft. And then I went in with some chipped sapphire, so I'm getting that purpley look that is going to match her dress. And I ended up going and getting another clean sponge, because the sponge I had was sort of falling apart, so that was easier for me to get a nice sort of diffuse color. Then go back in with the picked raspberry and just work back and forth until you don't see any blend lines. I did go and get some black soot there just for the top, because I felt that it needed to be a little bit deeper. I really wanted the sort of ombre effect. I used my distress sprayer to spray some water on it, and then I just sort of dabbed it with a paper towel. Did that a couple of times to get some nice sort of watermarks on the card. Then you're going to see how I'm putting it together here. I've already die cut the little girl's shape on the front of the card, and you can see now when you open it up you have the background, and I will now adhere this to that background and it will peek through the die cut shape on the front. So I did end up trimming the white part away so that there was a little bit of space around the die cut. That way it's easier to open and close, and also it gives a really sort of nice look, a nice outline around it. And I will adhere that with some foam adhesive little stickies. So I just covered the surface with those and then peeled back the adhesive paper and then popped it into the center there. I also used a My Favorite Things die. This is the Celebrate Word die, and I cut that out of some glittered cardstock, and I'm going to put that onto the front of my card. I'm using the Nouveau glue. That's my favorite glue to use. It's amazing, and it's such a beautiful size for an A2 sized card, and I think it looks great right underneath that image. I thought that the rest of the card looked a little bare after I did that, so this heart is in the same stamp set, and I'm just stamping a few different colored hearts, and you can see that I'm stamping the heart and then stamping it off on some scrap paper so that the heart is sort of soft, it's not too dark. Then I just took a hole punch and I punched a few circles from that glitter cardstock, and I'm going to use that sort of, not, you know, like enamel dots or glue dots or whatever. I'm going to be using that to sort of spruce up the card a little bit, add a little bit of sparkle there on the top. And then I'm going to use my MISTI to line up the happy birthday sentiment that comes in the stamp set. And I am going to ink that up with some VersaFine black ink. And I was able to position it perfectly. And I did go in and add a little bit of the chipped sapphire around the edges of the card, just to make it look a little less stark. You can see how it opens up, and then you can open up that flap and write your salutation inside. And then I did go in with a little bit of picked raspberry too, just to spruce it up a little bit. Now for the second card, I have a piece of Bristol Strathmore cardstock, and I'm scribbling 3 different zig marker colors onto it, and then with a flat paintbrush I am just painting along the colors, blending them all together and going back and forth in a straight line, and then I just let that dry and I cut it out with a heart die. Now this is an old die from Whiff of Joy that I have, but I will link to a very similar heart die below in case you want to purchase it. So I just put that on an A2 sized card, and I'm just adhering those die cut images on top. I had a hard time figuring out where I wanted to put the bone. So I finally decided there was a good place. And then I wanted to put a sentiment on this as well. So this also comes in the stamp set. You have my heart, so same thing. I lined it up, positioned it on the heart, and stamped it with some black ink. And there you have it. Those are the 2 cards that I made from one stamp set. I did darken up the eyes with my Copic multiliner pen. And so there's my Valentine's card, and there is my birthday card. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you enjoyed watching me create these 2 cards from this stamp set. A full list of supplies and links can be found below this video on YouTube or my blog. Thanks for watching. See you next time.